Hey everybody, welcome back to World History. We're going to do section 2 of the chapter today, so go ahead and get your notes out and let's get started. So, once again, we got a whole bunch of terms and definitions. Like I said, I'm not going to go over these too much here in the video format. If you're in class, we'll talk about these a lot more as we go through the notes, but I will leave these up here long enough for you to get the information. So, our essential question today is, as Enlightenment ideas spread across Europe, what cultural and political changes took place? Well, the Enlightenment brought cultural changes as writers, artists, and musicians spread new ideas. Even absolute monarchs in Europe became enlightened despots by granting greater freedoms in their realms. So, really, France is considered to be the heart of the Enlightenment, and the ideas are then going to spread out to the rest of Europe and beyond. Now, these new ideas are going to create challenges to the rulers of the day, and more people came to believe that reform was necessary in order to achieve a just society and truly embrace the ideas of the Enlightenment. Now, most government and church authorities felt they had a sacred duty to defend the old ways of divine right rule and strict social classes. And the most common defense was through censorship of writers and books. Now, writers are going to fight back by disguising their ideas in fiction. Again, censorship is the idea of blocking a form of media from the public. Voltaire's book Candide is going to expose corruption and hypocrisy in a more fun manner. Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels is actually going to satirize 18th century England, and Montesquieu's Persian letters are going to mock French society. However, though, these books are not going to be blocked because they're fiction. They use these novels as a way to call out the hypocrisy of the government. Now, ideas are going to be spread through salons as well as books and pamphlets. In the 1600s, a group of noblewomen in Paris are going to begin inviting a few friends to their homes for poetry readings. By the 1700s, some middle-class women are going to begin holding these salons as well. These are where they gather together to discuss Enlightenment ideas, listen to music, read poetry, and discuss changes of the day. Now, the most respected salons are going to host writers and musicians such as Diderot and Mozart as well. Now, art as well is going to evolve. In the age of Louis XIV, courtly art and architecture were grand and opulent, reflecting the lives of saints or glorious battles. This is known as the Baroque style, as seen in the decor of the palace at Versailles. We're now going to see a transition from that to a Rococo style under Louis XV. Artists moved away from the heavy splendor to more light, elegant, and charming subjects like this painting here. This style would also be criticized by the philosophers as superficial, but it was very popular among the upper and middle class to the point that everybody had to have paintings like these. As an art as well, music's going to evolve from Baroque to Rococo, and an elegant new classical style emerges. This is where we get our classical music today, where we have work of people like Johann Sebastian Bach, who created religious works for organs and choirs, George Frederick Handel, who wrote pieces for King George I, as well as 30 operas, as well as The Messiah, which has the Hallelujah chorus, Franz Joseph Haydn, who developed a string quartet and the symphony, whose head was stolen when he died. It's a whole time, I'll tell you that story in class. And then Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, probably the most famous, who created operas, symphonies, and religious music that defined this new style of composition. Think about it. If you're involved in any form of music whatsoever, classical music is such a big component of it. More often than not, when you start learning a new instrument, whether that be piano or percussion or any other instrument, classical music is typically where you start to learn your fundamentals before you move on to the more difficult things. Literature is also going to develop new forms and readers by the 1700s. Middle-class readers are going to like stories about their own times told in straightforward language. And this began an outpouring of novels or long works of prose fiction. One of the most famous is Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe, which was an exciting tale about a sailor shipwrecked on a tropical island. Now, these absolute monarchs who adopted or accepted Enlightenment ideas were known as the Enlightened Despots. We've already talked about two of them already. Now, they're going to apply these Enlightened ideas to their governments. This include Frederick the Great of Prussia and Catherine the Great of Russia, people we talked about last chapter, as well as Joseph II of Austria, Maria Theresa's heir. Now, they were convinced that some reform was necessary. Frederick in Prussia specifically is going to reduce the use of torture, allow a free press, and tolerate religious differences, which was huge for that region. Catherine's going to abolish torture whatsoever, establish religious tolerance, grant nobles a charter of rights, and criticize the institution of serfdom to the point that serfdom is going to end in Russia. And then Joseph II is going to modernize Austria's government, support religious equality for Jewish people and Protestants, end censorship, and abolish serfdom. Really, out of the three, Austria went the furthest with Enlightenment ideas in terms of the reforms that they made. Now, although they implemented reforms, they would not give up their own power. Frederick the Great's going to desire a stronger monarchy and more power for himself. Catherine's going to refuse to give up power and aggressively expand the Russian Empire. And Joseph II, a lot of his changes are going to be undone when he died, just like Peter the Great in Russia last chapter. Now, it's important to note, by the Enlightenment, life did not change really for a majority of the European population and these new cultural movements. The majority remained peasants in small rural villages. By the late 1700s, though, ideas about equality and social justice is going to reach these peasant villages. These ideas are going to sow the seeds for the political upheaval of the 1800s, which we'll talk some about that next chapter when we do the French Revolution, and a lot more next semester when we hit chapter 20. So that is it for notes for today. Your assignment is to complete the Chapter 17 web quest that is posted on Google Classroom. I will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.